rules can be used inside Sage Intacct to provide users with automatic email updates and also alerts or warnings and errors when certain information is entered or not entered into the system. Smart event is basically triggered in this case when a given event occurs and certain conditions are met. Basically, it's a condition that triggers an email, or it can actually post to a web application as well. It can be based off new entry of data, or a change in data, or a delete of certain data or objects in the system. So in today's example, let's use this. Let's say the controller wants an email sent to them when a user, while entering an accounts payable bill, doesn't code it to a project or job, but codes the GL account to a cost of sales account. So in this case, it would be a range of accounts between 5,000 and 5,007. So basically, those accounts should only be used for projects. So we can use a smart event to set that up and to alert particular user or email address of when this happens in the system. And where you would do that is inside Sage Intacct. You would go to Platform Services. If you don't see Platform Services on your menu, make sure you're at the top level. It does only show at the top level. So inside Platform Services, we're going to go down to the bottom here under Object Customization, and we're going to go to Smart Events. And I'm going to click on my Smart Events list to see any existing Smart Events that I already have set up. And in this case, we're going to create a new one from scratch. And what's nice about the Smart Events, like a lot of different areas in Sage Intacct, is has the ability to use a wizard tool and basically just go step by step through the process. So I'm going to click Add here, and basically I'm going to go through a three-part step process. And the first step is to choose what object I want to review and view for this event. So in this case, I want to dig into an accounts payable bill, and I'm actually looking at the accounts payable bill detail. I want to look at the actual individual line coding to find individually when a job is blank and a GL account of a particular GL account number is used. So I'm not going to grab the AP bill, which would be the header of the invoice. I'm going to grab down to the AP bill detail record. So I'm going to look here, AP bill detail. Then I'm going to click Next. And now it's going to ask you to select your action. And in this case, in most cases, you're going to use the email, but you do have other options here where you can post it to an HTTP site, an API, or a log. But in this case, we're going to go email. And we need to decide on what events to review this on. So if I click Select, my options here are going to be Add or Set. What Add means is when a new record is created, check this. And what Set means is when a existing record is modified or edited, check it. And in both cases, we want to run this event rule, because if somebody changes an existing bill and takes the job out or puts in a different GL account, we want it to check also, not just adding new bills. So we're going to grab Add and Set and click Done. And at any time, you can click Save and come back into the process and go from there. The next step is we have to build our condition. Now, in the condition, you can free type the fields, and you need a particular format and structure. So what we recommend is over on the right, you can use the field lookup. And this field lookup, if I click it, will give you all the available fields in that object that you can select a condition off of. So the AP bill detail, these are all the fields in that entry screen for AP bill detail. It will also show you the associated objects that you can also condition and filter on. So I have a lot of options here for the AP bill entry because I'm connected to so many areas in the system. So one of the things with the condition is learning how to use the formulas to get what you need. And what Intacct has done, especially in the help system, is actually there's a link for a PDF document, and they call it the Customization Services Cheat Sheet. And we'll make this available in the shared documents section of this live stream, and also we'll put a link in it as well, so you can get to it. But you can also get to it through the help system here. After typing in smart events, you'll see it. So here is the cheat sheet, and this is extremely helpful when going through and making sure you're using the right formulas. And you can see here in the first sheet, it kind of shows you the flow of how the events work, gives you some examples, which is very, very nice. And basically the second sheet is the important sheet. So it basically gives you all of the operators here. So greater than or equal to, or, and all the functions that you might need when building these conditions. So it's a really, really handy tool. I'll shrink it down for now. So basically what I want to say is I want to say when the project is blank. So what I'm going to first do is go to the field lookup, and I'm going to find the project field in the AP detail record. And it's in typically alphabetical, or it'll be job. It'll either say job ID or project ID for you. We'll say job ID here, and I'll click OK, and that will return the field back in the proper formatting. And then I want to go into my back into my cheat sheet and say what do I use for the in this case equals to. So you'll see here you have equal to and not equal to. So equal to is going to be 2 equal signs. So equal, and basically what I want to say here, I want to return a true value because I only want to run the email when it's true. So I only want to run it when the project is blank. And how to do a blank in this formula is just 2 single quotes. So in between the single quotes is blank. You could say, job number 03001, and that would be equal to job 03001. But in this case, we want it to be blank. Okay. But I don't just want a blank job, because if it's a blank job, it's okay if it goes to a particular group of general ledger accounts. So we don't want it to send it out for every blank job for an AP bill. We also want to say, and also if it's between this general ledger account range. So going back to my cheat sheet, I also have an and operator, and if you search for that, you will find that is up here. All are true. And how they do that is the double ampersand. So if I come into here and say ampersand, then I could do my next field. So I'm going to say and I'm going to go to the field lookup again, and in the AP bill detail there's an account, a GL account field, which is going to be right here called account. I'll select that and click OK, and now that fills the account number in. And what I want to say there is there's different ways to do it. If it's a particular one particular account, you can say equal to. In this case, I want to include a group of 5,000 to 5,007, so I'm going to do a greater than or equal to. So I'm going to go greater than equal to, and that's in my cheat sheet as well, right here. And I'm going to use my single quote and say my first number is 5,000, and that's in my general ledger chart of accounts. Okay, and I did that, and now I want to do another and. So I'm going to go ampersand. I'm going to grab my account number again. Click OK. And then I'm going to do less than or equal to, and you can expand this out if you want it to kind of flow in one line. And I'm going to say my last account in this range is 5,007. You can do this off an account type, account group. There's a lot of different ways you can do this for. So I have my condition in there. Basically, project is blank, and the general ledger account is between 5,000 and 5,007. That will, when it returns a true value, is when it's going to do this email. When it returns a false, it just does nothing. Okay? So that's all you need to do here. And now I'll click next. And the next step is you're going to define the email. So who do we want to email this to? And we'll email this to myself. but this would be like the controller. And I can put a subject in. I can, in some cases, you can have a PDF file attached depending on the record you're on, and then a body. Now with the subject and the body, you can incorporate existing fields in Sage Intacct. So for example, I might want to say something like AP invoice doc, and then maybe I want to include the invoice number and the vendor name in the subject. So you can come into here, go back to your field lookup, and pick what you want. So I'm going to put the let's see, the bill. Where is it? Oh, so there's two things now, right? We were in the bill detail record, which is the the entry line for the invoice. So I want to get the bill invoice number, and that's not going to be in the detail. That's going to be in the summary in the header. So if I scroll down, you'll have an AP bill record. So if I click on that, that's basically the header record, and now you'll see due date, vendor name, invoice date, that type of stuff that's in the header of a bill. And in this scenario, I want to say bill number. And then I also want the vendor name on there, so I'm going to click vendor name. So you can click them together, click OK. Now they'll come bunched up, and if you want to space them, you just scroll across here and maybe put a space in there. And then in the body, type in whatever you want. The following AP bill was entered in the system without a project number. Something like that, but coded to one of the cost of sales accounts. In general ledger. Please review the following. Okay. Now you can use HTML as well if you know your HTML shortcuts and formulas. You can also look that up on a website. You can find it easily to bold it and things like that if you want to. So basically in this case, I'm just going to say vendor name, grab the field lookup, and again grab the vendor name, which was in the bill again. I'll grab the vendor name. You could space it if you want. I'm just going to keep it simple here. We'll say bill number. Now you can also copy. So if we already have this up here, you can also copy or just type it in. You don't have to grab it from the lookup every time. So I can copy that in as well. Okay. And then I'll also show the date of the invoice. So we'll go date. And in this case, we want to go back to the field lookup for the date. And that's going to be in the bill record itself, the header. And we'll grab the date. Okay. And you could add other information, but this will be good for now for us. And we'll click next. And then we have to label it. You have to give it an ID. So in this case, let's call it AP bill. We'll say no job. Cost of sales. COS. Okay, and you can put a description of what the smart event is for, and at that point you click done and save it, and it's going to be active. Now you don't have to activate it yet, but we're gonna activate it. Done. Okay, so that smart event is set up and is actually functioning right away, real time. Now, if show you an example, let's go in and put in a bill, and let's see if we can get an email triggered. So I'm going to click to add a new bill here in accounts payable. We'll use today's date, who the vendor is. We'll say Buffalo Welding. We'll give it an invoice number. And looks like no terms came in, so I'm just going to say net 30. And you can fill all that regular information out. So I'm going to come down to here to the detail, and this is that object that we were reporting on. And I'm going to skip the job information. And I'm going to go right to the account, and I'm going to say, let's do cost of sales subcontractor. and we'll just give it a 1500, excuse me. We'll code it to the construction department and to this company, Timberline General Construction. Okay, so I have that in the system. I should have a scenario that's going to trigger my event because I have a blank job with account in the range, and I'll just click post. Now we will have to wait usually about a minute or so for the email to come in. We should hear it come in, so we'll move on until we get that email. So one of the other things you can do is you can do smart events on, oh, I got an email. Let's go take a look. Yep, I got the email. So if I pull that up, so that took probably 20-30 seconds. So here's the email I just got. So it has my invoice number and vendor name in here, and then my, the following AP bill. Here's the information. Was just entered with without a code. I probably should put the GL account information on here as well, but whatever you need to give me my alert, and now I know I can go back in to the system into accounts payable, and I could review that invoice right here and go in and take a look and see what happened and make the changes if I need to. Okay, so that's how that event works. I did another one. You can do another one here. For example, when a vendor is being set up, or I have another case where we created a custom field in here in the vendor record where we wanted to track some insurances. So A1 Electric, for example, we created a custom field. So this tab here is a custom tab, compliance information, and they just wanted to track an insurance for this vendor and when it expires. So you can see here the insurance expiration expired on 2/20. So we can also have an alert, for example. A good example would be for a smart event would be, let's say when an AP bill is getting entered into the system, or a purchase order for that matter, but we'll do an AP bill again. Let's do a smart event that sends out an email to us that says, hey, a bill was just entered for a vendor where the insurance is expired. Okay, so I can click add here just like we did before. Now in this scenario I don't need to grab the detail because I don't need anything in the detail of the bill. I just need the header, which has the vendor information. So I'm just going to do this one off the AP bill header, and I'm going to click next. Still going to do an email, and I still want to do it on an add or an edit. I don't want to do it on a delete, because if it's a delete, well, that's okay because we're not paying that bill, so we don't need to see it on a delete invoice. And then the condition there would be, now I'm going to go and do it off of, where is that field? That field is not on the AP bill. That field is on the vendor record. So I would click field lookup, and I'm not going to go to the AP bill. I'm going to go to the vendor record because it's a related field. And now I have access to every field on the vendor record. And in this case, you'll see down at the bottom here, there's my insurance expiration date. So I'm going to say check that off, click OK. And we want to receive a message if the expiration date is less than or equal to today. Now back on my cheat sheet, I have some formula cheat sheets for dates, and the formula to use for a date is just today with a open and close paren. So all I have to do here is say today, open close paren, and while I'm at it, I'm feeling confident. I also want to include it if there's no date at all. That's even worse. So I'm going to say or this time. I'm not going to say and, I'm going to say or. And the or function here in your cheat sheet is two vertical lines here. So I'm going to come here and say or, and then I'm going to go back to my, well, let's copy it here. We don't need to go back. I'm going to copy this expiration date. And just like the prior record, I'm going to say equal to blank, which is the, oops, not the quote, the single quote. Okay, so that condition is going to return an email if that scenario is met. And you know how this section works just like before. And we'll just call this, let's see, vendor with AP bill that has expired or blank. Okay. And we'll just say the following vendor has an AP bill in the system with expired insurance. Okay, so you could then do a, put in the vendor name, and so forth. So we'll add something quick here and move on. But we'll say AP bill, vendor name, maybe the vendor ID, and I want the bill number. Click OK, and then maybe I want the vendor ID, vendor name. Let's do the record on the second line, so you can do that. Oops. Let me add that again. I think I deleted it. Now we'll just leave it like that. Okay, so we can put that in there. Next, and we'll call it vendor expired insurance. And save. So just like before, we can go run it. So we know that that A1 Electric has an expired insurance that just happened 3 days ago. So if we put in a new bill for A1 Electric, terms are already in. So we don't really care about the detail. I don't want to get 2 emails, so I'm gonna pick a. Let's leave it blank. We'll just use like a 6,000 count. We'll just say it's office expense, and we'll say it's 4,500. Okay, and put a department in, and we'll put a location in. And now, once I click post, I'll get a trigger on that because it's checking the insurance expiration date. And that's, really the smart events are really only limited to what you can think up and logically apply to a condition in the setup of the smart events. It's an extremely useful feature. And I got my email already. I'll pull it up. And you can see here, the following vendor has an AP bill in the system with expired insurance. I probably should have put the expiration date on the insurance there as well. So you can get more creative with this as you're more time to set up the email. But there is my vendor that I can go check on now. Okay. The other thing real quick we want to show you is within platform services, you also have the ability to do smart rules. And what smart rules will provide you is will provide you a warning or an error during entry. So instead of getting emails, you can actually have the user be stopped in their tracks or either warned about the situation. So for example, I did set up a smart rule previously here for the vendor email. So in accounts payable, for example, when we set up a vendor in the system, we want to make sure that the user puts in an email address for the vendor. So if you see here, just like the other screen for smart events, a smart rule, I set it on add and set, which is add or edit. So anytime someone's in there adding a new vendor or changing a vendor, this is going to come up. What's nice about the smart rule is you can have it be a warning or an error. So let's make this an error. Okay. And then we put in the condition just like before. We go to our field lookup. In the vendor record, there's a primary email. And so we basically put a condition here and says when primary email address is equal to blank. You see that cheat sheet there for a second. Yep, equal to not equal to blank. Then we want an error. Okay, so one of the biggest differences in the smart rules versus the smart events is the condition in a smart rule is going to give you the error or the warning when the condition is not met. Okay, so the difference in this is we want to put in a condition that is going to return a true value and the warning or error is only going to show when that true value is not met. So in this scenario, we want it to be where the vendor email address is not blank. And when it's not blank, we're okay. When it's blank, we want an error message. So it's kind of opposite of the smart events where you're trying to get the exception. Where in this case you want it. Here's what we want to happen, and when it doesn't happen, we want an error message. So in the error message, you can also type out, and this is what I really like, exactly what you want it to say. So you can really explain out what the error is and why you're getting the error. Okay, and you can get creative with this as well. But this looks good here, so I would just save it through, give it a name, and done. So that's going to be there in the system. So now if I go into a vendor, and I'm just going to go into an existing vendor because it's on edit or add. So if let's go back to A1 Electric, and in here you'll notice A1 Electric does not have an email address. So if I don't even think you have to, I'll just do a blank space here. If I click save, it gave me an error. Now an error is not going to let the user move on. It's going to error out, and it's going to let you know, please enter a valid email address. There's the message right there that we put in. And then you can say go back, and the user has to physically go back in and fill in the email address, okay, before they can save that record. So it's especially handy when you're creating a new record. They can't get it in until that's filled out. So it's a good way to set up and make sure your fields are being put in the system properly. Now if I set it up as a warning, I go back into Smart Rules, and the only thing I'll do here is click Edit, and I'll change it in the second step. So instead of an error, we'll make it a warning, which a warning is just that. It's going to give you a warning, but it's going to let you go on. So I'll save that. So now we have it set up as a warning. If I go back into the same screen, same vendor, click Edit, and go to this vendor here now, and we'll just click Save. And the difference now is I get this message up at the top of the screen, hey, please enter the vendor email address, the same message that we set up. You violated a smart rule. If you want to ignore this, repeat your action. So if I don't have an email address and I'm never going to have one for this vendor, I can just click Save again. This will allow me to save the vendor without an email address. So that's the difference between a warning and an error. It really depends on what kind of stop you want during that cycle. So the smart event and smart rules can be used for different functions within the system, and it's kind of in my eyes the fun part of setting up a system like Sage Intacct. We can get through all of the quote boring information, get all the accounting set up, get the system live, but now we can start using these features to really separate yourself and make the business run much more efficiently day to day, and stay on top of issues instead of checking on them 3 months later realizing something wasn't coded correctly. So that is the session for today on smart events and smart rules. Please like us, subscribe on the YouTube page, and have a great day. Thank you.